Welcome to Mindful Conversations. I have Desarae Garcia here with me, and I am so thankful that I know you're super busy. You've been so busy, but I'm so thankful that you could take the time to be here with me and just, spare a few minutes and share some of your amazing journey that you've been going through. I mean, I was at your women's retreat. Was it last month?
Yeah.
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 I
It was
loved it.
July.
I absolutely loved it. I mean, I was there with my daughter. We had an amazing time. It was such a healing and just, I felt like we were able to heal together as well as just getting closer too, having the
Yeah.
relationship, mother, daughter, stronger relationship, definitely. So, and your retreat
Absolutely.
help us, to accomplish that. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad. That makes me so happy. Yeah. I'm super grateful that you found it last minute and were able to come with her. I love seeing you guys bond, and I thought that was a great experience for the both of you. Yeah, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Like you said, things have been kind of crazy on this side since the retreat, especially, but I am super grateful to be here. So thank you.
No, thank you. So please tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah.
Whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
So at this point, I'm an open book. My stories, all over. So
Yeah.
no questions are too much for me. But I will just kind of give you a little bit of it in a nutshell. So I was basically born into trauma. I was born into a very abusive, toxic marriage between my mom and my dad. It was just, like I said, very toxic, very abusive, just not a good home for any child to see and be in. So that ended when I was around 6 years old. My parents got divorced. They both quickly, kind of not very quickly, but pretty quickly, within I think the same year, they both moved on, and my dad got remarried and my mom did as well. And I met my old stepfather who, I was grateful because he was really funny, really like nice and outgoing. But at the same time, I remember always kind of having a wall up, like just kind of feeling off. I'm very intuitive with people and how their energy is. I always have been. And I always kind of felt like something was off. But, of course, at 6 years old, I didn't know what it was. So from what I can remember, the first memory I have, it could have been a little before that, but for sure it was started when I was 8. He started sexually molesting me and abusing me. From there, it escalated pretty quickly, and I ended up being sexually abused from age 8 to 15. At 15, I had, by that time I had an eating disorder, severe bulimia. I was a cutter. I had tried killing myself 3 times. I was very just self-destructive. Like, I hated life. I didn't listen to my parents. My mom and I didn't have a good relationship. It was just not healthy at all. And, my old stepfather really used the relationship with my dad to kind of take control over me, because my dad and my relationship was not very, very good at that time. Mm-hmm. And so he used that as, well, I'll be your father figure. But then at the same time, behind closed doors was my abuser. So it was very difficult. He was not only sexually abusive, on a almost daily basis, but he was very physically abusive. At one point, I remember he basically, I never got doctor guaranteed, but I'm like 99% sure he broke my ribs. I had, he would hold pillows over my face, held knives to my throat. He would punch me until, punch me so hard in the stomach, I would pass out. He was just a very, very abusive man, but very scary man. At the time, I remember thinking he was just like this big, scary man. And now looking back, he wasn't. Now that when I've seen him in court recently, I remember he wasn't as scary as I thought he was. But when you're a kid, he was a monster. And, he had a no fear tattoo, and he was just like a scary guy. And so he, from the beginning, always threatened that if I ever told anyone, he would kill me or my family. He would tell me that he'd bury my brother alive, my dad alive, he'd kill my mom. I mean, you name it. He would say he would hurt the people in my family. He was also the father of my little brother, my youngest brother. And that also made it very difficult because if I told, I would break our family up, and I thought my brother wouldn't have a dad. And my dad and my relationship wasn't very good at the time. So I didn't want that for my brother. I didn't want him to not have a father. So I stuck it out. He was very abusive, physically abusive to my other brother, my middle brother. And I would try my hardest to protect him and tell him to hurt me instead. And, try to take the fall as the biggest sister and oldest sister. And sometimes I would, and sometimes it wouldn't work, and he'd, hurt both of us. So it was just, like I said, a very horrible home to live in. It's funny though, because people would never think that was the case. Like my mom's a great mom. She's always worked really hard, but she also had to provide because he wasn't a great provider. And so she worked 3 jobs. So she wasn't able to see what was happening. She was working and she was trying to keep food on the table and our bills paid and, all of that stuff. And I believe, he was also abusive to her. So she wasn't able to recognize the signs of what was happening. On top of it, people always say, how did she not know? How did your family not know? Because of the threats that I had from him and knowing he would do it, I had to become a very good liar. Anyone who knew me would not have thought that was happening. I always had a smile on my face. I was always, at least out in public. Behind closed doors, I was, a little bit more distraught and I had problems at home. But for the most part, nobody would have any idea what was happening. And at home, whenever anything was going on, people just assumed it was my dad. The reason I was acting out was because of my relationship with my father. So again, no one asked me questions. I was never asked what was going on, what anyone was hurting me. I was never asked those questions. And so at one point, I had tried hanging myself and I failed. And I remember feeling so frustrated and literally praying and yelling at God, being like, I can't even kill myself, right? Like, why won't you let me die? Like, why am I here? And I just remember being so angry. And, that probably was about a week before. And then about a week later, I was up in the middle of the night. I had finally convinced my mom to put a lock on my door. We had just bought a new house. And I told her it was because I was a teenager and I wanted privacy. And so I was able to get one of those ones that have a key because I knew he'd pick any other lock. And so I remember I got one with the key and I hid one key at my best friend's house. And then I had the key hidden somewhere else. And so he never knew where that key was. One night I was sleeping. I had really bad insomnia. I never slept at home, like ever. I would literally sleep at school. So I had really bad grades. I was really bullied at school. I didn't take care of myself. I wouldn't dress cute or look cute because I thought if I looked undesirable, then he'd leave me alone. Yeah. But on top of that, I was bullied because of it. And I was, made fun of and all those type of things. And so one night I was laying there and he came to the other side of the door and I heard him trying to pick the lock and he was whispering and telling me to open the door. My mom was asleep but her room was on the opposite side of the house, so she couldn't hear. And he was whispering and telling me to open the door. And I just remember laying there and literally just being frozen and thinking, just don't move, don't breathe. And like, he'll go away. And eventually after a while, he got pissed and walked off. That night, I always say that my higher power, I believe that God took over me at some point and gave me the strength to do what I never would have done on my own. And that was to go and get help. I woke up that day and got up, got dressed, and literally ran to school as fast as I could. I went into school. I found one of my friends who I had known just recently had come out with that she had been molested. And so I came out and told her, I said, my stepfather's been sexually abusing me. He's been hurting me. And I don't even think I used the word sexually abuse. I honestly don't remember what I said because at that age, I didn't really know what sexual abuse was. Yeah. So I don't really remember the words I said, to be honest. But I told her something and I told her I needed help. And I had a teacher who had been basically helping me that whole year. She's the one who found out I tried to hang myself. I had like a rope burn around my neck, and she noticed. She went and reported it to the office. She had called the suicide hotline with me at one point. So she was very, very supportive. She says she always knew something was going on, but she didn't know what. So anyway, I went and told her. Again, I'm not sure what I said, but I told her I needed help. And we went to the school office and told the school counselor. And this is where the shame comes in of, a survivor telling their story. Is I tried to tell the school counselor, and the school counselor, well, my teacher did. And she told my school counselor that I was just being dramatic, that I was a dramatic little girl, and that I was just getting attention, and that I wasn't, not to listen to me, and that I was just negative attention seeking. And I remember just sitting there and just being like hearing her from the other room and just being like, that's it. Like, they're sending me home. I'm dead. He's going to kill me. Like, this is it. And luckily my teacher fought for me, and she told her, she said, that's not our job. It's not our job to determine whether or not she's telling the truth. Our job is to report what she's telling us. And so we're reporting it. Luckily she did, and they reported it. A detective came right away. And I remember when the detective came in, I was sitting in the office, and she came in, sat down, and said, Desi, your school counselor told me you've had a rough year, that you've had a lot of stuff happen this year. Because I had been caught cutting, and there was some things that were happening. And I mean, the thing is, I was probably negative attention seeking, but not for attention. I was just trying to get heard. I was trying to call for help. You know what I mean? And so usually, when people are doing that, it's because they do need that attention. They do need that help. Right. And I was trying to get it. It wasn't just because I wanted attention for the fun of it. And so she came and sat down, and she said, look, I need you. This is a very, very huge accusation. This can ruin people's lives. And I need you to tell me right now. If it's not true, I'll let you go home and we'll act like this never happened. Or if it's true, then we'll figure out what we can do. And I honestly, my eyes welled up with tears. And I just told her, I said, if you send me home, he will kill me, and you'll never see me again. And I don't know what else he'll do. And I remember her eyes got teared up, and she touched my hand, and she said, okay, I believe you, and I'm going to help you. And, that was about it. They called my mom. My mom came into the office. They told her, she passed out in the office. It was a very emotional moment, of course. And they were not able to arrest him right away because of evidence. I ended up having to do a lie detector test. I ended up having to get a full exam. I ended up having to do all of those things to basically prove that I had damage from him. And eventually, after a couple of weeks, he ended up being arrested. We went to court. I could not testify against him. I tried, and literally just ran out hysterical. I couldn't. Once I saw him in the shackles, right in front of me, I was terrified. And so anyway, he ended up getting 3 to life for what he did to me, which people say 3 to life, but it really means minimum 3 years. And that's most of the time what they'll get. So I knew he wasn't going to be in there very long. He ended up being in there for 10 years. And that's because he got 5 years for what he did to me. And then he got 5 years because I believe he got attempted murder or something like that from his cellmate. Because he broke his cellmate's jaw. And I don't know, he's a very aggressive man.
Right.
So, in 2015, he was released. Before that, after I got him into prison, I did what I think anyone would expect, and I spiraled out of control. And I was sexually acting out with boys at school. I mean, you name it. I was just going around, and I didn't care. I was just you know what, screw it. What's the point? And one of the girls at school had screamed in the hallway, Desi had sex with her dad. And that was traumatizing for me. So I never went back to school after that. And I just got worse. A couple months later, my mom and my dad ended up putting me into a residential treatment program. And I actually lived there from 15 to 17. So I lived there for 2 years. In that process, I was diagnosed with major major PTSD, major depression, anxiety, borderline personality disorder. I mean, you name it, they diagnosed me. But the biggest thing is they thought I had borderline personality disorder because at some point, after about a year being there, they eventually figured out I had dissociation identity disorder. Which people who don't know what that is, DID is very rare. It's like less than 2% of the entire world have it. It's not very common. It's mostly common to people that have like war vets and things like that. And it's basically where you go back into that actual moment of trauma. So again, for war vets, they'll look around and they'll see that they're at war and they'll see gunfire and hear bombs and all of those things. Well, with my trauma, what would happen when I would disassociate is I would go back to being 8 years old, 9 years old, whatever age I was when a very traumatic abuse situation happened to me. I was abused by him probably almost daily for years, but there's very specific ones that stand out more because they are more traumatic than others. And those are the ones that I would replay. And I would literally throw myself on the ground and my face would turn purple because I thought a pillow was being held over my face. My stomach, I would literally, the wind would be knocked out. The wind would get knocked out of me because I thought he punched me in my stomach. Basically, your brain reenacts what it thinks happened. So it's basically as if he was doing it all over again. My body literally had the effects as if it was happening in that moment. DID also has another, other people, the way they deal with it is they have multiple personality disorders. I did not get the multiple personalities. I just got where I disassociated to different ages. So mine was a little bit more rare than others because again, people get multiple personalities, but I never dealt with that. So I would disassociate. At one point, they came and told my mom and brought her in the hospital, a big hospital here in Utah that's for children, brought her in and told her that I would never be normal, that I would never live a normal life, that I would never drive a car, that I would never have children, that I would be basically in a mental hospital for my whole life. And they did not think I would ever just, I guess, live a normal life. And again, at 17, I was discharged. And at 17, I ended up moving to New Mexico. I literally just told my mom I needed to get away from here. And I had family out there. So I packed up and I moved to New Mexico. That's where I met my husband now. And I lived there for a year. And during that time, after I got out of rehab, I was very careful that no one knew my past. I didn't want anyone to know what happened to me. I was very good at wearing a mask. I was happy Desi. I was just like, nobody knew what was happening. Nobody knew that I dealt with major depression, and I would go into like dark spaces where I would literally do nothing but drink, smoke weed, and sleep all day. Like I was just doing nothing with my life. Right. I gained like a ton of weight, and it was just a bad cycle I was in. So anyway, eventually we moved back to Utah after about a year. My husband came with me. We were just, engaged at the time. And I, for years, I just put on the face like everything was fine. I started becoming a counselor and working as a psych tech. I started really working in the field of this, but I did it, but nobody knew why. Nobody knew why I wanted to be a counselor. Nobody knew why I wanted to work in the field. People just thought I was just what I like to do. Nobody knew my story to know why I related so much. So for several years, no one knew anything, and they just thought it was my job, 9-to-5 job. Mm-hmm. I had several miscarriages because of my trauma with my body. I've had 5 miscarriages and an ectopic pregnancy. Was told I would not have children because of basically the scar tissue and damage I have on my body. And yeah, for years I just kind of would go in and out of depression, but I would just get up and put a smile on my face and continue living until 2015. And
how did you get out?
Sorry, go ahead.
How did you get out of the depression?
Honestly, again, I became such a good liar for so long. I would lie to myself. I would lie to myself that I was fine. I would just get up and I would honestly just go through the motions of life. Mm-hmm. And it's not that I was like sitting there walking like depressed all the time. When I would start to feel or remember things, I would completely shut off, and I would I wouldn't allow myself to go there. I had never went to therapy again. When I left rehab, I left with a freezer bag full of medication that I was supposed to take daily. And I stopped cold turkey, which I do not recommend that. I stopped cold turkey, and I acted like this part of my life never existed until 2015. And that was when my stepfather was released from prison. I had just had my daughter. She was only a couple months old. And I literally felt my world just go upside down again. And I was traumatized and I was terrified for my daughter. And I just remember literally just everything going out of control. My marriage, my relationships with my family, my mom, everybody. It was just such a bad time. And, I remember at one point just finally looking at myself in the mirror and telling myself, I'm done. I'm done letting him win. I'm done letting him take my life. I can't let him do this to me anymore. So that's when I started telling people about my story. I started telling my coworkers and talking about it at work and telling my, the clients I was working with, and not telling them my full story, but telling them in a way that I related to what they were going through, which I had never done before. I talked about it for the first time with people and my close friends and just things like that. And it was very healing, I guess, to kind of have my voice.
Right.
And so, that's when I really just started trying to figure out what I was going to do. While I told people my story every single time, I literally would get people just sitting there at their face, in shock of, holy shit, how are you still here? How are you alive? What I just told you was very sugar-coated from things. Right. Yeah. And so, they would just say how, this needs to be a movie or a book or something. You need to do something with your story. And when I was younger and this would happen, I literally remember crying and saying, and again, praying and just being like, what is your purpose in this for me? Why am I going through this? What did I do to deserve this? There has to be a reason why this is happening to me and why you're not helping me. I was so confused. And so that was, like I said, around 2016, at that point, I was just done and I was talking to people and I was sharing my story. And, I had tried doing a blog. I had tried doing a couple different things, but nothing ever stuck. Nothing ever felt right. So one day my husband came home from work and he's like, hey, you should do a podcast. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I just listened to the Elon Musk podcast. And he's like, you should do one. And I had never listened to podcasts before. So I was like, okay, we'll try it and see how it goes. So I literally got a cheap little microphone, my HP, old as crap computer. And I just went in my closet and recorded an episode and I released it. And the next day, my story went pretty viral. I had I can't even remember, 20 something. I can't remember, almost 20,000 views or listens or something like that. It was crazy. And so my episode went viral and I started getting messages on Instagram, just blowing up my phone. Thank you for telling this story. I just heard your story. So-and-so shared it. You just gave me the strength. I almost killed myself last night until I heard your story. Or I had a plan to kill myself, or, I wasn't ever going to tell anyone about what was going on with me until I heard your story. And it gave me the courage to go tell, things like that. And I remember that's when I was like, holy shit, this needs to be talked about. This is something that is needed. Why is this such a taboo thing? Why are we so ashamed to talk about our past?
Yeah. There's so much shame behind abuse.
So much shame about what happens to us. We don't make it. It's not like we make it happen. We just are the victims of it. And yet we're the ones that carry the shame. And so, so I, just in that moment, I remember telling my husband, I need to continue doing this. And so I did a part 2 of my story, my story is episode 1, 2, 4, and 8. So it's actually 4 episodes. Each episode is about an hour long. Again, I very summarized it for you. My story is very long.
Yes.
A lot of stuff in between. But again, that's when people just started reaching out to me and saying, I'm ready to tell my story. I've never talked about it. My parents don't even know, or my friends don't even know. And I've never told it before. And that's when I was like, okay, like we're going to give you your power back. You're going to take your power back. Exactly. You're going to use your voice, and you're going to go again. You're going to fight against your abuser. And yeah, so that's kind of where it all went from there. And then in June 2000, so I started my podcast in March 2019. Yes, March 2019. In June 2019, I got a phone call from an FBI agent. And he said, your old stepfather was rearrested, which I knew. I had gotten notification that he was arrested again. And he said he was caught with child pornography, which I knew he had a problem with that from the past. And he said, but I don't know how to tell you this. He said, but they raided his computer, his phone, his apartment, everything. And he said, we found over 200 pictures of child pornography with your face cut out and put on every single picture of me now, my face now on child pornography. And I literally I was working at the University of Utah, and I was in shock. And I just stood there. My partner said my face went white. At this moment, I was a crisis worker as well. So at this point, I'm literally going on scene to suicide, people that are suicidal, to trauma, to people that have just been raped. So I'm literally working in the field, and I get this call. And he said, there's pictures of you on the porch with your children, at the park, at Costco, the parking garage of your work. He was literally following me on scene to my, what's the word I'm looking for, to on scene, basically, whatever my work was, whatever job I was doing. And he said also, when we brought him in for questioning, you were the screensaver on his phone, and he told the police that you were his girlfriend. So this man was a full obsessed. He had some type of shrine in his apartment or whatever. I think he lived in a halfway house, or I don't know if he housing or something, but he had a little apartment or room or something. And they found basically a shrine of pictures and all types of stuff of me. I don't know if he had other things of mine. Maybe I don't really know. I honestly didn't get into that much information because I was in shock. Yeah. But what the detective said, at some point throughout the court case, he said, if we wouldn't have found him when he did, I don't know if she'd still be sitting here. I believe he was planning to abduct me, kill me, torture me. I have no idea, but I definitely think he had some bad intentions. Yeah. I went to court, and he would tell the people and get all excited that I was there, because he thought I was there supporting him. He literally had just lost his mind and was obsessed, had an full obsession with me. Mm-hmm. And I remember being so pissed and so mad and so hurt and so traumatized of here I am. I've been a counselor, crisis worker for 11 years. I started a podcast to help people, and yet I'm literally being re-traumatized by my original perpetrator from 15 years ago. And I remember what the hell, what am I supposed to do with this? And I just remember being so pissed. And again, I wrote, and I write, when I'm, that's kind of a coping thing for me. Yeah. And I remember just kind of sitting in the mirror. And again, I looked myself in the mirror and I said, no, we're not doing this again. We're not going down this road again. You worked way too freaking hard to be here. And so, I fought, and I went to court, and I did what I was not able to do the first time, and I testified against him. I read a court statement to him and to the court, and basically called the court out and told them that they failed me as a justice system, because I'll add that I had felt for 2 years that I was getting stalked by him. So I would get phone calls and I would hear breathing. I swear at one time I saw him at the grocery store. I would because I worked the night shift when I worked as a crisis worker. Mm-hmm. So I'd come home at 1 a.m, and more than once a car would follow me with their lights off. One time a car was sitting in front of my house with their lights off, so many different things. And I would call, and I left voicemails for his parole officer and the board of pardons. And I never received a phone call back, nothing. And so I just finally was I'm just going crazy. And that's kind of how my, not because they did it on purpose, but that's kind of how my family and friends kind of did it too, is oh, it's just her PTSD because he's out. Like she's just, imagining things, like not thinking it's a big deal. Like I literally remember my parents, my mom and my dad saying, why would he do that? Like he's free. Why would he come out and stalk you again? And then I would rethink and be like, oh, you're right. I don't know. That's stupid. Like, why would he? But in the long run, he was. And I was, again, follow your intuition, because I knew something was off. I told my husband's probably the only one that fully believed me, because he saw a couple things. And so he believed what was happening. He would hear the phone calls and things like that. So I went to court, and like I said, I testified and called out the court, and I looked at my old stepfather in the face, and this was over Zoom because it's over COVID. So I could see him as if I'm seeing you right now, but I don't think he could see me. I think his screen was off. But I called him out, and I told him, I said, you took my childhood, you took my past, but I will not let you take my future. You've taken enough of my life, and that's it. And that was probably the most powerful moment I've ever been through. And I took my power back, and that was it. And he ended up getting life in prison. He will not be out anymore. And that's when I, in that moment, decided I'm bigger than a podcast. This is bigger than a podcast. And I started my foundation, and that is Candle in the Dark Room Foundation now. And it's where a couple things that we offer. I go to court with survivors who face their perpetrators in court, and give them that power that I had, and show them that they can do it. If I can do it, they can do it. And the power is within themselves. I named it Candle in a Dark Room because in the darkest of darkness, I was the light that pulled myself out of that darkness. I had to look for that light inside myself. If I wouldn't have, nobody could pull me out but me. And that's where that's come out of, is I had to look deep within myself to find that light, just that little flicker of light that helped guide me out of that dark tunnel. So we do, like I said, we go to court, and then I also do now one-on-one coaching and sessions, which is a mix between therapy and coaching. And then I do group courses where we do a group of 10 or so people, and we do group therapy. It's basically, again, a mix between therapy and group coaching. And it's called Finding, oh my gosh, my mind just went blank. But anyway, my course, Finding Purpose in Your Trauma. Thank you.
Okay.
I totally forgot for a second, but Finding Purpose in Your Trauma. And it's, basically anyone who's been through anything, you have a purpose in this world. Every single one of us do. Yeah. And that's what I kind of teach. And so we do groups. We just had, like you said, our women's retreat. I had a banquet. We're going to do a gala next. We do meetups and just lots of different things, basically just a support system and a community of survivors who know that there's always resources. There's always somewhere you can go. You can come meet us and have a group of, like-minded people that have been through the same stuff you have. And it's a really safe space for anyone who's been through any type of trauma. And that's the thing. It's not just sexual trauma. It's physical, it's mental health. I've dealt with people who lost others to suicide. Basically, if you've been through hard stuff, we support you, and we're here for you, and we give you those resources. So that's kind of what we do now at the foundation. And that's not in a nutshell, because that's still long, but that's the shortest version of my story that I can usually get into.
I love your foundation. I mean, I love what you guys do. I'm a survivor of domestic abuse. And so being in a group with other women that have been through any type of abuse, whether it was sexual or physical or mental, is such a healing, is such a powerful thing to have as women, as sisters, and just being there to support each other and relate to each other. Because
to see you're not alone.
Exactly. You're not alone. You're not the only one. And there's help. And there is a purpose. There is a purpose behind, your trauma, like you're doing right now. I actually became a therapist because of what I went through, and I started therapy. So that's why I decided to become a therapist, to give that power back to other people, and not just to give them the power back, but to regain their confidence and and know that they're not alone, and know that they are enough, and that they can,
and know that they can still do something with their life,
still
and
do
be
something,
successful,
exactly,
even after what happened to them. And I think that's what happens a lot of times is people think this too much has happened to me. They have that victim mentality of, this is who I am. And I'm broken, drugs, alcohol, prostitution, whatever it is that they feel safe in that moment because they don't feel like they can do anything else. And that's where I wanted to break that statistic of, I didn't become a drug addict. I wasn't on the streets. I didn't do those things because I chose to heal. I chose that. I chose to turn my victim to survival and to a survivor. And that's where I think people sometimes get stuck, but know that no matter what you've been through, you can change that, and you can be a survivor, and you can beat the statistics of not being here, and I mean, if I can do it, literally anybody can.
Anybody can, yes. And I wouldn't even call it a survival now. I would call it you're thriving.
Right.
That's how I feel now, because once I went past the victim mentality, it was like, okay, I'm not just a survival now. Now I'm thriving. We're thriving. We're using that to bring light to others, to bring that purpose. That it's okay. There is a purpose behind, on the other side of the fear, on the other side of the pain. There's love, and there's,
even if it's you're the light for one person.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I absolutely love your foundation. I love your purpose and what you do in your women's retreats and what you do in your foundation. I mean, it's such an amazing work to be able to be there for other women. And it's just amazing, because when you're going through that cycle of abuse or trauma, you don't think that there is help for you. You don't think that you're worthy of that help, or that you're worthy of, staying alive. You just want to end it. Like, like you went through that. But there is so much more. And that's why, I love your foundation, because it gives hope that there is so much more. There is so much more, on the other side of that pain, on the other side of the trauma. There's so much more to do, and there's so much more to accomplish. And and I mean,
and
your
like
story,
I said, there's a purpose.
Like a horror story. I know you just summarized everything for us today, but if you went over that, if you are thriving now, there's other women, you're giving hope to so many other women that it is possible. It is so possible to be happy again. It is so possible to find the joy in life.
Absolutely. And I mean, I did break the statistics, but also, I mean, I have 2 children that I shouldn't have, and I am married, and I drive a car, and I take 1 medication now, not, there's so many different things. And like you said, it's because I wanted to be a purpose for someone, and anyone who's been through trauma can be just that little light that someone needs. You don't have to go and write a book or do a podcast or have anything big. It can be literally just being the light for one person to save their life. And that could be your purpose in this world. And all of us have a purpose, even those of us who've been through the worst possible things you can imagine. And just know that, I always tell people, like, what would you tell your younger self? And mine would be to just hang on a little longer, because there is light at the end of the tunnel, and there is a purpose in it for you. And I just think that that's the case for anybody who's ever been through anything. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. I could not agree more with you, because I went through that. I used to complain and be like, why is this happening to me? Why me? I'm a good person. I'm a good person. I don't do anything bad to anybody. So why is it me? But, like going through my whole, journey too of healing, it's like I just learned that it wasn't that life was happening to me, but life was happening for me, and there was a purpose of it. There was a purpose, because now as a therapist, I can understand their pain. You can relate to your clients, you can relate to your patients like so much better now. And or groups or other people that are going through the same. You can relate to them and they can relate to you.
And I think that's what sticks.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think that's what sticks me out a little, like sticks our foundation out a little bit more is, our foundation is survivor led, because anybody, people can go to school all day and learn how to help with therapy and things like that. And I think therapists are amazing, but I also think that that's what all like clients I work with have said. That's what drew me to you, is not only do I have the professional experience, but I have the personal experience, and I can relate on all levels. And I think that's very rare. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of survivors that come out and do this work, because it's too triggering, because it's too much, because it's too, like I said, it's too triggering. It's too hard for them to bring up their past. And I get it. It is hard, but that's what I think makes our foundation a little bit different than others. Is we've all been there. We've been through similar things, and we actually are survivors ourselves. And like you said, we're thriving in this life, and we're teaching others that they can too, no matter what. And so I think I definitely think that's a huge difference, not just education, but also the experience.
Absolutely. Yes. And to me, as experience, it's so much more, it's just so much more relatable than just having the education. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh my God.
I think that's why you're a great therapist as well. So
Thank you, Desi. Thank you so much. And oh my God, thank you. I cannot thank you enough for being here with me and sharing your story and just being so open now. And I'm listening to you and I was like, oh my God, like, wow, like she talking about it makes you take your power back. Talking about it, talking about your experience really gives you your power back, because it gives you your voice back.
Yeah.
So,
and it really does. And I think that's what people don't understand too, is I get that a lot. People on a regular basis are like, how do you do this every day? How do you talk about this every day? And, talk to survivors who have been through it and hear their stories every day. And that's why, because it is healing. Doing this work to help others has helped me more than I even expected. I didn't know it was going to heal me as much as it has, but talking about it and using my voice that, when we're children and we're being abused, I didn't have a voice for 15 years and more than that. So probably more like 17 years until I was out of rehab. I never had a voice. And so now for the first time I have a voice, and now I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep using my voice for not only myself, but for those that still don't have a voice. And that's why I have my campaign, Be a Voice for the Voiceless, that I do every year, because it's huge. But it takes a village, and we need to all be part of that village of being a voice for those that don't have one. And that's why we help survivors of trafficking as well. And, all of them, because there's so many people that are still in a home or in an environment where they have zero say and voice in anything that happens to them. So.
Oh my God. And I absolutely love that too. Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you for that work.
Thank you.
Yes. Well,
thank you, Dessie.
No problem. Thank you for taking the time today to be here with me.
Of course.
Sharing your story and just bringing more light to other people, and like bringing more hope and letting them know that there is hope and there is help too, that they should not be going, with thinking that there is no help for them or there is no hope for them, because there's so many organizations like your foundations.
So much.
Yes, there's so much that they can reach out and get help.
Yeah, just know you're never alone, like you said, never alone. And also, like I was saying earlier, we have our group that's starting next week. And then we also are constantly doing new groups and one-on-one sessions. So if anyone here would like to be a part of that, please message us, and we'll definitely have a spot for you somewhere. So.
Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you, Dessie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prime. So great to talk to you, and I appreciate you. And all right. Mwah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a good night.
Now, glutathione is a big word, but it's the body's own master antioxidant. So it's a scavenger for free radicals, for bacteria, and what's relevant now, viruses. This is new to the marketplace. There's no other product on the market that has the ingredient NACET.
And basically NACET increases the production of that glutathione that is in our body already to strengthen and enhance our immune system and keep it strong. Elevated sense of well-being. Supports muscle strength and endurance. Cognitive function. Powerful liver support. Energy. Helps blood sugar regulation. Superior bioavailability of key ingredients.
One of your best defenses against COVID is a strong immune system. Taking GSH Plus as a daily supplement does all that. And now we have the product out on the marketplace.